Students, hello. This is Miss Zelaya, and today we're going to go over how to set up your Common Application. So for those of you students who are getting ready to apply to your four-year colleges and universities, this is a pretty crucial step and one that you need. The Common Application is one of several different application platforms, and currently over 1,000 colleges participate in the Common Application. What does that mean? That means that this is one main application where you input your information one time, and then you select the colleges that you would like to receive this information, right? So it's a nice streamlined way for these schools to get your applications. A couple of different exceptions to that are UCs and Cal States. So UCs have their own application platform, as do Cal States, which means that if you have any UCs, UCI, UCLA, etc., or Cal State, San Diego State, Cal State Long Beach, Cal State Fullerton, if any of these schools are on your college list, you will want to make sure that you're setting up applications through those separate platforms at another time. But for today, we're going to focus on setting up your Common Application and going over a few of the important sections. So let's get started. Okay. So we're going to navigate to commonapp.org. That is the website that you will need. It should look like this. And then you're going to click on Create an Account. It's going to ask you some very straightforward information. First of all, starting with what best describes you. So you are going to be a first-year student, a first-year college student. And then it's going to ask you for some just general information. Under email address, we highly recommend that you don't use your modern day email address, but that you instead use a personal email address, or even better, set up a college-specific email address. The reason? Well, once you start applying and once you start submitting these applications, these colleges are going to be emailing you and communicating with you pretty regularly. So we want to make sure that you don't miss any notifications and that it doesn't totally overwhelm your modern day inbox, right? So keep that in mind and go ahead and put that email address in. Select a password. Make sure that you're keeping this password safe somewhere, whether it's on your notes app or if you have another system or a password keeper of some kind. Make sure that you're saving this somewhere safe. Okay. And then you're going to select the option that best describes you in this question. So right now, the Common Application is operating under the 25-26 academic school year. And on August 1st, it will roll over to the 26-27 school year. So as of right now, if you're class of 2027, you're planning to start college in 2027, and that's the option that you will select. Then you'll just follow up with some personal information, name, date of birth, your contact details like your phone number and your permanent home address. And then you will answer the questions around the privacy policy and preferences. And then you'll create your account. Super easy. That will allow you to log in. And once you log in, you should see a dashboard that looks like this. So we've gone ahead and made an account for Monty Monarch. And I want to go over a couple of these different sections just to give you some important information to keep in mind. On the bottom left-hand corner, you're going to see your name. So Monty Monarch in this case, your email address that you set up your account with, and then you're going to see this CAID number. This is your Common App or Common Application Identification number. If you're ever, signing off on a waiver or on a different platform and it's asking for your Common App ID number, this is the number that you're going to be putting in, okay? And then on this dashboard, you're going to see this first section says My Common Application. This is the main general application with 7 different tabs or sections. And this is the part that's going to be sent to every single college that you put on your Common Application list, right? So they're asking for very general information, your background, your family makeup, your education, your demographics. This is also where you will find your main personal essay and then etc. Just below that, you will see a section titled My Colleges. So on your side, you will see an option to start researching. I have already added a school, but we will show you how to add some more. And as you can see, I've added USC. And then it will allow you to set some deadlines, okay? So that's the basic dashboard. Off to the left, you will see very much similar information, right? So under My Common App, you will see each of these 7 sections. Let's go ahead and click on that, right? Each one broken down. And as you start adding colleges to your list, they're going to appear under My Colleges on the left-hand side, right? Couple other areas I wanted to highlight before I dive into those 2 sections is the direct admissions section. This is an offering from Common Application. They give you the option to make your information available to certain colleges and universities across the US that may be able to review your application and give you an admissions offer. This is free to you, for you to use, and you don't have to accept any of these admissions offers. But if you'd like, this is available to you, and it'll go over how that works and how to accept an offer if you are offered admission from some of these colleges. There is also a financial aid section. This is where you will get additional information on obtaining grants and scholarships, including applying for the FAFSA, which is the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, which is really, really important. And I would say vast majority of the colleges will require it if you're looking to take advantage of any grants and scholarships. And even some student loans, right? So keep that in mind. There's also a section on loans and work study. So you can find additional information there. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Common Application, right? Obviously, you're going to be asked some general information about your background, where you live, who's in your family, who lives with you. I wanted to highlight the education section because it will ask what high school you currently go to, if there's any other schools that you've attended. So here you see I have already added my high school, which is obviously Mater Dei, and you'll see our address. So you want to make sure that it's the right Mater Dei. As many of you know, there's several Mater Dei high schools out there in the United States. And for the class of 2027, your date of entry should have been the 2023 year. So I've got to change that. But the 2023-24 year. Let's go ahead and change that now. It'll ask if this is a boarding school and if you will be graduating from this school and when your anticipated graduation date is, right? So that'll be June 2027 for our class of 27 graduates. And then if you were graduating early, late, or pretty much on time. If you're graduating with no, unique timeline, then you're going to be selecting the no change in progression option, okay? Once you hit continue on any of these sections, you'll see on the left-hand side a green check mark. That will typically mean that it's complete. Now, I would recommend, highly recommend, that when you're getting ready to submit an application, that you go over every single one of these sections, even if there's a green check mark, because there's certain questions that are not required, but that you may want to respond to, okay? There's also another question on whether you have attended any other high schools not listed in the previous section. So if you're a transfer student and you maybe spent your first 2 years at a different school, this is where you can list that, and then you'll indicate what school that was, okay? So because I put 0, it also completed that section for me. All right. So going back to the main Common Application, another area that I wanted to highlight was the activity section. Activities is a really important section, one where you get to shine, one where you get to highlight all the things that you've been a part of outside of the classroom over the last few years, right? Certainly over the high school years. That could be your sports involvement, that could be clubs, if you are involved in the arts, if you're a musician, or if you're in theater, if you have any special hobbies that have been a huge part of your life. Maybe you're writing a book, maybe you've taken up crocheting and you have a crochet club or something like that, right? Maybe you volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club and have been doing it for several years, right? The things that are meaningful that take up, your time outside of the classroom. This is the space where we want to put that. Now, Common Application gives you 10 spots, so an opportunity to provide information on 10 activities. And it's really important that you're mindful to include from most involved to least involved. So the order that you put these activities is very important. And the description box that they give you is not very lengthy, which means you have to be very intentional, very wise about how you describe your involvement, right? And the way that we recommend that you approach this is by focusing not just on, I was a part of such and such club for 2 years, but rather focusing on the impact that your involvement had, right? Were you involved in bringing in, thousands of dollars in fundraising efforts? Were you involved in changing the way that a system was played out? Or were you involved in creating a new play with your theater department, right, that you brought to campus, right? What is the impact that this activity has had on you or on the community that you were working with? That should be the focus of this section, right? If you need help, obviously your counselors are here. We are here to help and guide you through this process, but be very intentional on this activity section in particular, okay? There's also another section that's relatively new on the Common Application. It's responsibilities and circumstances. Now, a lot of these colleges want to know if there's any extenuating circumstances that have been a part of your lived experience while you were in high school. And so some of the things they may ask you to check boxes for is, if you have had additional responsibilities at home, or if, maybe your parents are not bilingual or don't speak English, and so you were responsible for translating for them at doctor's appointments or at office appointments. Maybe you were in charge of driving your younger siblings around or caring for an elderly grandparent, after school or before school, things like that. So if any of those situations apply to you, that's the box that you're going to want to check off on. And this just gives some really important context to these admissions officers. So please be open to that. And if you have any concerns, again, bring that up with your counselors and we can guide you through that conversation. Okay. Down at the bottom, there's additional circumstances. So for many of our students, that first option, commuting for, 60 minutes or more, we have a good number of students that come from outside of the Santa Ana area. So for some of you, this may apply, right? And those are additional circumstances that these colleges want to be mindful of that you're dealing with while you were in high school. So check off anything that applies, okay? The writing section, this is where you're going to put your personal essay. So once you start adding colleges to your list on Common App, you're going to see that they're going to fall into one of two categories. They will either require the personal essay or they will not require. Since I had already added USC to my college list, it shows up on the required, which means I will need to complete that before I submit my application to USC. So we have provided information earlier in the spring semester, which included the Common Application essay prompts. They give you 7 options. You only have to pick one, and those 7 options are listed here again for you. But essentially what you'll do is you'll be pasting your essay into this box. You do have to have a minimum of 250 words, maximum of 650, and I would highly encourage you not to to write all 650 words, okay? You definitely don't want to be writing your essay in this box, but rather you want to go through a few drafts on a Word document, on a Google Doc, and then make sure that you have a trusted adult or somebody else to help review that with you so that your authentic voice is coming through and everything that you want to communicate comes through, okay? Beyond that, there's an additional information section. So there's some examples of what you could include here. So, a couple years ago when when Los Angeles had the wildfires, the Palisade fires, this would have been the section for students to include, hey, my house was was lost in the Palisade fires. This obviously impacted those students' high school experience, and they, experienced some pretty significant hardships. Beyond that, there's other things like, if you had trouble accessing just a quiet study space at home, if there was anything unique that happened in your 4 years or with certain classes, maybe you had 5 different teachers in one semester. That's important information to note, right? If you have benefited from accommodations or you have a learning difference, this could be a place where you touch on that if it's not in one of your essays. And again, you can reach out to us counselors and we can kind of guide you through that to make sure that you are framing it in the most appropriate way and that you're either not giving too much information or not giving enough. So that's important to note as well. Okay. So those are the main sections of the common application that I wanted to highlight. Now, under my colleges, I'm going to add one more college just so we can see what that looks like. And you'll see the long list of schools here listed below, but you can also type it in. So another school that's pretty popular with our students is the University of San Diego. You'll see that come up. And if you want to add it to your college list, you're just going to click on the little plus button. Now you see that it will be under my colleges right there, right? When we hit overview, we're going to see your colleges listed here. And this is important to review because here you will be able to see under more details what is required of each school. This is where you'll be able to see what is required, what is optional, including the recommendations, the common application personal essay, and if they have any supplemental writing prompts, right? So if there's a school that says, yeah, like I think TCU used to have this question, but it was why us or why the major that you're selecting at TCU. This is where you're likely going to find that information, right? So it's very important to keep track of this because this is where you're going to really see the differences between what's required and what's optional from school to school. Another very important section that I want to highlight is the recommenders and FERPA. So you see on the left-hand side, I have expanded one of the colleges, so University of San Diego. Recommenders and FERPA is a section that will ask you to do a few things. Number one, you can add your teacher recommender. So it's going to ask you, who's submitting a recommendation on your behalf. This is where you're going to be able to put your teacher's name and their modern day email. This is how your teachers will be able to upload their letter. And we'll go over this in more detail when we have our individual meetings in August with you, okay? But before you can do that, you have to sign off on a FERPA. This is a release authorization that basically says that you waive your rights to view the letters of recommendation or any information that's provided in those letters. Our recommendation is that you do waive your rights. And the reason for that is simple. Colleges want to know that you have not influenced these letters in any way, that everything that's coming through is genuine, is authentic, it is true. And one of the ways that they confirm that is by knowing that you have no access to these letters. So I know it feels a little misleading maybe sometimes, or you feel like I would really love to be able to see my letter, but this is why we recommend that you are very intentional about picking your recommenders, your teacher recommenders, and selecting people who know you well, who can speak positively and highly on your behalf. Because these letters really do hold some weight with this colleges. Okay, so this is where you're going to complete that release authorization, and that needs to be done before you can add any recommenders to this page. Okay, so make sure that that is on your list of to-dos. Okay, so that's pretty much in a nutshell what the Common App is all about. There's a lot of pieces, but as you start working on it, you will get familiar with it. There is a lot to do, so it's never recommended to do this in one swoop on one afternoon. That's just a lot of work on your part and definitely not recommended. So set up a college power hour, especially over the summer. Carve out 1 to 2 hours a week where you're just tackling these items. And as I mentioned, because the Common App is currently in the 25-26 academic school year, my strong recommendation is just to focus on your basic Common application. And then starting August 1st, you can add your colleges that you will be applying to, because then we will be in the new academic school year, the 26-27 school year, and it will be reflecting the most recent deadlines, the most recent requirements, and any other additional information that the colleges want you to see. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to your counselors. We're here to support you, and best of luck in this exciting journey. Good luck, Monarchs.